All right, welcome everyone. I have the distinct pleasure of being surrounded by some experts in emergency medicine and teaching and education. We're going to be discussing today an article from the Annals of Emergency Medicine that we posted earlier this week on Academic Life in EM. And it's really looking at social media in the emergency medicine curriculum. The title of this article is Integration of Social Media in the Emergency Medicine Residency Curriculum. And we have two of the authors on this paper with us today. So we're going to basically start by asking each of the authors and the other experts we have a few questions and let them kind of respond to this and really talk about what they've done and what they've experienced with this new sort of technology or niche that we have within teaching. So first off, I'm going to introduce Dr. Kevin Scott. He's the lead author on this paper, and he's also an assistant professor of emergency medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. And we really wanted to ask Dr. Scott, what was the impetus sort of for this paper, and what was their most significant barrier that you had to overcome at your institution in terms of implementing this new innovation?
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and thank you everyone at Academic Life for having us and hosting us. So our kind of approach in writing this paper was actually discussed in some of the comments on the blog itself, but you know, a lot of the people that make comments about foam and social media and how we integrate it into education are the people that are already included in that community of practice, right? And so what we wanted to do was share our experiences with integrating social media in a less, I guess, a less foamy kind of way by putting an article in Annals, hopefully kind of reaching beyond all of us who use these tools, and maybe getting some others involved that will see, you know, the paper once it comes out in print. And another reason that we wanted to do this was also we knew there were many programs out there doing something with social media and incorporating technology into their curriculum, but I'm not sure really it had been shared, at least not obviously so, out in the open. And so really, and we kind of discussed this, I guess, explicitly, we wanted to start a conversation again, having programs share what they're doing, what's been working, what's not working, all for the overall purpose of hopefully coming together and figuring out things that have worked, and figuring out ways that we can continue to use these tools to help our learners. So what I'm actually going to touch on is going to, in terms of our biggest barrier, is going to jump way back to the beginning of us even becoming involved in, I guess, Twitter and our Facebook account and our penniem.com website. Mira will touch more on kind of, I guess, some of the common faculty and resident engagement issues. But really what I'm going to go back is talk about navigating our health system as a whole. So it took about a 6-month process for me. It's dealing with our legal departments, our public relations, and many other people involved in the health system to even have them allow us to have a presence as a residency program in social media that was out there for everyone to see. And understandably so, they were a little bit hesitant. It included, again, a 6-month process, about a 10-page proposal with how we were going to monitor this, who was going to oversee it, and then a lot of dedicated work from many individuals, including Mira, our other program leadership, Lauren Conlin, Francis DeRoos, my co-chiefs, Nick Johnson and Cindy Shu, as well as Raina Merchant over in our social media lab here at the University of Penn. Through all of that, though, the School of Medicine and the University Health System gave us the green light, and we started our Twitter account, got the approval to start using some resources actually for our curriculum, and now we're kind of paving the way at Penn, which we're all very excited about. But even more, what we're excited about is the knowledge and expertise that come from all of you and all the other educators out there, and the opportunity now to hear what you guys are doing and how we can bring that into our program here. So that was our #1 big barrier.
Thanks, Kevin. That's very insightful and helpful for other programs that are looking to do the same thing. One of the things that Academic Life in EM has helped with is we've tried to put all of the EM residencies that have Twitter accounts on the map, and I think we're getting close to about 100 now, which is pretty exciting. Next, I'm going to touch base with Dr. Mira Mamtani, who is one of the co-authors on this paper, and she is also an assistant resident. She is the assistant residency director at UPenn. And Mira, we were hoping that you might be able to talk a little bit about how to engage faculty in this new type of curriculum, and maybe what outcome measures either you're experimenting with or that you might foresee for other programs, specifically to meet some of the ACGME standards, such as the program director must monitor resident participation, there must be an evaluation component, there must be faculty oversight, and then lastly, the activity must be monitored for effectiveness.
Hi, Brian. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to be part of this discussion. So there are two things in the paper that I think are worth highlighting in this forum that we're doing at Penn. The first of which is the asynchronous curriculum that we developed. So this is something that we've worked on to implement in our program over this past year. And we spent a lot of time trying to find high yield and interesting content that addresses all the core contents. So what we ended up doing is picking podcasts that fit with specific modular curriculum. So currently we're in the allergy and immunology block, and we spent some time trying to find specific podcasts that address core contents like anaphylactic reaction or Kawasaki disease. We decided to pick podcasts in particular because we found that residents like to have alternative methods of learning, and that this specific method lends itself well to multitasking. So, running and listening to a podcast. The way we monitor their completion is that we have them answer board-style questions at the end of each block, attesting to their completion of the topic. Some of our concerns prior to implementing this new curriculum were that we wouldn't be able to find enough core content through this method. And while there are certain topics that are hard to find, because they're not really all that interesting or high yield, we've actually found some really great, brilliant, engaging, and applicable podcasts. And initially, the residents were all on board, and we had some trouble getting faculty engaged. What we found is that once the residents started listening to it and talking about it during a shift, the faculty felt out of the loop, and then they felt obligated to start getting involved in the process. So we really thought that the residents were the way to get the entire department interested in alternative methods of learning. By the way, I would just recommend checking out Academic Life in EM approved instructional resource if you're interested in incorporating asynchronous curriculum, because these are all previously vetted and it's free and available to all. So the other project that we've been working on at Penn is trying to find a way to evaluate the residents through the milestones by using some interesting and new curriculum designs. So we've created debates in our conference time that take common ED complaints, like headaches that you suspect subarachnoid hemorrhage. And then we spent some conference time debating whether you should do a CT and LP or a CT angio. Residents are required to use any and all resources at their disposal. And we found that it was kind of fun, interactive, part of the flipped classroom model. We found that at the end of this, residents often felt that it would be a great way to sort of take best practice guidelines and create a protocol. So having this in mind, we ended up being able to evaluate residents on specific milestones. Milestone 16, level 4, milestone 19, levels 3 and 4, and milestones 1 and 6, level 5, were all addressed by going through this process of the debates. So a lot of fun stuff, and I'm really excited to hear what everyone else is doing and to see if we can find a way to incorporate those into our curriculum at Penn.
Thanks a lot, Mira. And we've already had a lot of comments on the blog itself talking about other people's experiences, and some have shared some similar to you, and some have shared different ones. So thank you very much for that. So it sounds like resident peer pressure for the faculty is the way to go. And you mentioned another key component, which is a good transition to our next speaker, who is Dr. Stella Yu. We really have a pleasure of having her on today. She's the author of Flipped EM Classroom and also an assistant professor of emergency medicine at Ottawa. So, Mira, you mentioned the flipped classroom, and Stella, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of your challenges and insights into really instituting or implementing this flipped classroom model in our EM education.
Sure, thank you for having me. As you know, for the flipped classroom, there are two components. So first is the home module, the core content that learners have to watch or read beforehand, and then there's the classroom activities. I think the accessibility of the online resources are great for the home modules. So as a teacher, I can just sort of pick and choose what I like my learner to read and study beforehand, and I don't have to create my own content. However, I think there are two caveats to that. One is that as a teacher, if you're going to use the module, you must review it yourself to ensure this is the right complexity for your learner, it's the right message you want, it is correct, and so on. And it sort of leads to my second caveat is that even though there are lots of resources out there, some of them are not explicitly stated which level of learners it's pitted for. So there are great blogs and great resources. They're really meant for the more seasoned physicians. And so if I teach a lot of clerks, so if I give that to a clerk, they wouldn't really know what to do with it. And so I think finding and sort of sorting through the resources become the onus for the teacher before they can use it. Once you've used it, or once that's done, I think that makes your prep really easy. And the second part for the flipped classroom, it would be building activities. And I think this is where a lot of the teachers I see have trouble with. So I am used to giving, say, a didactic lecture for 45 minutes for 60 minutes. Now that time is free for me to do whatever I want. It's quite scary for teachers who are not used to using active learning or group learning. And the question is, well, what do I do with that time? Do I have them do tabletop exercises? Do I have them do lo-fi sim? Do I have them do role play? And I think that support is needed if we are going to roll it out and use the online learning as a home module, and then gives the support to teachers and say, you know, for these concepts, maybe you should decide to use small groups, and each person should have a task. You have a student play a patient, you have a student play a patient's family, you have somebody play a doctor, and then this is how you bring out your objective. So I think the toughest part as sort of the flipped classroom proponent is to finding out the right exercise to do, because I don't have enough experience in that. I'd love to hear what people do with it.
Thanks, Stella. We're going to continue this great discussion next with Dr. Seth Truger, who I think is now in Chicago, right? He was in DC last year and has traveled up to Chicago. He is the assistant social media editor for Annals of Emergency Medicine. So we really wanted to get his perspective in that position, or from that perspective, is what do you think about social media and academia in general? Maybe perhaps you could talk a little bit about looking at quality assessment of social media content as a major barrier that we're facing.
Sure, thanks, Brian, and I really want to thank you all for including me, and I just think so far this is a great discussion, and everyone's doing great work. I think overall there are a lot of challenges to incorporating social media and online content into curricula and just academia in general. But overall, I think it's getting buy-in is going to take time, but it's a fight that we're slowly winning. And I think one of the big steps is going to be figuring out ways to assure quality over time, and that way we'll be able to get in buy-in not just from our fellow faculty peers, but also from our chairs, our deans, our promotion and tenure committees, from everybody really across the board. So we can get the support for creating the content, and then so we can create good content and continue to get the support. So I think those two are really intertwined. Part of my kind of overall conception of social media and academics right now is that none of the challenges that we have in social media or online content are unique to the medium itself. I think one of my favorite analogies is, you know, a lot of people are very skeptical of Twitter because it's a bunch of celebrities tweeting pictures of their breakfast and junk like that. But if you had an alien who knew nothing about our practices at all, and they landed, you know, downtown Baltimore and walked into a library or a Barnes and Noble's, they look and they didn't know anything about books, and they looked around, they would see a bunch of fantasy books and a bunch of bodice-ripping romance novels and a bunch of children's books and a coffee shop and a bookstore for some reason, and none of it would make any sense. But we all know there's a lot of high-quality stuff there. And it's also similarly, when you look at the way we've been doing medical education for recent decades, for the past century or so, since Flexner and things like that, there's all sorts of limitations, and none of the limitations about social media and the content and the quality therein are unique at all. We know there are all sorts of problems with peer review. We know there are all sorts of problems with textbooks, particularly how long it takes to publish the material and how out of date it is by the time it comes out in textbook format. So I really think that a lot of this is, we need to make the right comparisons to the right status quo ante, and to make sure that we don't think, perfect is the enemy of good, and we need to keep moving forward and producing high quality work.
Cool. Thank you very much, Seth. The last speaker we have before we'll kind of give everyone one more chance to make some closing comments is Dr. Mike Gisandi, and he's the residency director at Northwestern. And we were hoping that Mike could talk a little bit about how they incorporated technology into their residency curriculum and have partially overcome sort of the quote-unquote more experienced faculty not buying in.
Well, thanks for having me, and I assume by more experienced you mean older faculty like myself.
You said it, not me.
Yeah. I know I was asked. You know, those folks who are local here will happily admit that I am anti-social media in most instances. I was a very late adopter, if you will, of Twitter. I just joined over after listening to Michelle Lynn speak at SAM. I don't have a Facebook account, you know, so I am the older physician that you refer to. But, you know, I am a believer in it, and I really think that this is, you know, as Seth alludes to, the wave of the future of medical education. I think that those of us with a little more gray hair simply worry about some of the cautions around, you know, posting private information of patients and the private goings-on of an institution at the same time that learners believe that they're posting things that are of interest to teaching and learning. So I think to get my cohort, if you will, of peer faculty members to buy in, you need to do three things to have it be successful, whatever the technologic innovation is that you're going to use, be it social media or anything else. One, I think it needs to be very simple. We've had problems with being early adopters of different online programs and resources where even the login was so cumbersome that you couldn't get a faculty member to do it. If it takes more than a couple of clicks, it's not worth their time. So something like Twitter is really quite easy and is a simple app, and you can do it walking between your office and the ED and be able to stay current. I think also in terms of being simple, you need to have really minimal training involved in this. Faculty development is difficult to do, and to do it right, it needs to be short and concise and meaningful. And to that point, I think the second sort of key to success is that there needs to be import to what you're doing. What is the motivation for adopting a new technology at all? I think some folks are just early adopters, period, right? They're the ones that are in line for the new Google iPhone every single time, or Apple iPhone, I should say, every time an iPhone comes out, and they're the ones that buy the Google phone to see if it's better than the iPhone, even though they just bought a new iPhone, right? So there's going to be some of that, and we were early adopters of clickers when clickers first came out, and we bought one of the first products that was out on the market. It was very expensive relative to our budget, and we used it for a little while, but it was a first-generation model. It was hard to incorporate into our PowerPoint presentations. It was constantly failing in terms of login for the folks in the audience, and that early adoption was kind of a lesson learned. And I think more important, the motivation comes from demonstrated benefit. And that benefit can be to your patients and improving patient care, improving learning in general, or it can be a demonstrated benefit to the faculty member who just wants to be a better teacher. And that's where I think the third key to success comes in. And you need a peer champion. You need someone who on the faculty has gone down the road before, they've had success, and they can bring it to their colleagues and their friends and explain to them why they should walk the road as well. I think there are some great successes that we've had here with technology, and certainly more so with social media of late. One is that we converted, much like Penn, our journal club to an evidence-based medicine discussion that incorporates podcasts and journal club articles at the same time. We noticed that more and more residents were watching videocasts, listening to podcasts, and that was their sort of primary source of new information about the literature. They weren't reading journal articles. And they'd come into work quoting these podcasts and saying so-and-so said this or that, and the faculty weren't familiar with these sources of information and would question the source. And we wanted to make sure that they could vet this new source of medical information the same way they could vet journal articles. So we brought the podcast to Journal Club, and each podcast topic that we have has supplementary journal articles so that you're learning both media and how to critically analyze it. It's going to be so important for the next generation of physicians who are going to get snippets of information on Twitter and have to question, is that real, is that not real? How do I look up some information to make sure that what I just read on Twitter is fact? Another great success that we've had is something our assistant residency director, David Salzman, created, something called a follow-up blog. So we have an internal blog where our residents post their follow-up of their cases. We used to do follow-up, a required RC task. You have to follow up on your patients. We used to do it in handwritten logbooks that would be turned into our residency coordinator. they were lost and worthless after a while and really didn't allow the learner to do anything other than complete a task. In the follow-up blog, they actually have to type in a blog post and some pearls of wisdom that they learned by following up on their case. And then their colleagues can post responses and say, well, when I had a case of aortic dissection, I did the following. And there could be a discussion, and the new knowledge gained could live on in the department. We've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now, and we're about to convert all of those blog posts to individual posts on a new site, ALiEM-Curious, that some of our residents here are running. So we're very excited about that, and it's finally going to be able to be our chance to share all of that accrued information for the last several years with the general public.
Great, thanks, Michael. I've actually seen that ALiEM-Curious. I think they created a Twitter account already, so I'm anxious to see what they put out there. That's fantastic. You mentioned another thing that I thought was interesting too, and it's come up a couple times in the comments on the blog, and that is having this sort of champion for foam or the social media or this integration. You really need someone within the faculty that's going to continue to fight for that. So bringing that up as well. So before we end today, I thought we'd go back to each one of our guests one more time. Just a quick either final thoughts, or if you want to make any comments on something else that was said by one of the other guests. And so we'll start with you, Dr. Scott.
There we go. I really have nothing profound to say at this time. I mean, in terms of just final comments, I've been loving reading the discussion points and tweets that have been sent out. And really, you know, I'm just glad that it seems that this paper is serving its purpose, and that we're getting to hear from all of you and all the other experts out in the field. As we move forward, it's just very excited to see where this goes, and if we can create a community of practice using tools that's going to help keep all of us as faculty members up to date, and also train our residents and our medical students. And just want to thank, obviously, everyone for being involved today, and then the program directors here at Penn, and then my 2 co-chiefs, Nick Johnson and Cindy Schuoff, doing their critical care fellowships.
Cool, thanks, Kevin, so much. It was funny when Michelle and I posted the blog post earlier this week. There wasn't any comments in the first little while, and I was getting a little worried. And as you mentioned, it's kind of really triggered a lot of interaction throughout the world. So we've got a lot on the Twitter feed and a lot of comments on the blog itself. So it's really been a great discussion. Dr. Mamtani, do you want to add any final comments?
I was just going to say that there were some really great ideas during this discussion. I'm excited to check out ALiEM-Curious. I really think that the future of medical education is changing, and that there's some really interesting and different ways to incorporate this stuff into our curriculum. So I'm just excited to be in this discussion and read these blogs and hear what's going on out there.
Thanks very much. Dr. Stella Yu?
I think that the last point where Michael was saying about faculty development is key, particularly for educators to learn how to teach in a different way. And I am confident that we can get our colleagues to do that, since emerging physicians are used to adapting. We're really flexible with using what we've got. And so if we just give them a little bit of support, I think we can use this as a new way of teaching.
Yeah, I agree. Dr. Truger?
I don't have a lot to add, but I just think, you know, right now we're seeing publications in the mainstream literature. We're seeing, journals like Annals not only embracing social media, but partnering with sites like Academic Life and EM. Again, this is the new world, and we're helping, you know, really change medical education, not just for residents and med students, but for faculty development, lifelong learning.
Yeah, it's been really great to see the evolution. I think you were one of the first people to be sort of appointed by a journal as a social media person, and now I've seen it popping up in other journals as well, and I just think it's fantastic to have this collaboration. Dr. Gisandi, do you have any final comments?
This was a great discussion. Again, thanks for having me. I would say, in addition to the sort of the high, lofty goal of medical education, I think social media has a lot of other valued added aspects to it for residencies in general. This is a topic about social media and residency curricula. One of the main uses that we have now for Twitter and for Facebook and all the various sites is alumni development. We have a great alumni network. It's large. It's hard to keep track of everyone. And we've really come to enjoy seeing Throwback Thursday every week and getting all the alumni to post pictures and make comments. And these would otherwise be lost folks who would only see each other at ASAP, and now we really keep in touch with each other's lives, and I think that's not to be overlooked. There is some social media, social part of this that is so valuable for residency programs.
Yeah, that's a great point. That doesn't get brought up too often, so thanks for mentioning that. One thing I forgot to do at the very beginning is introduce who I am. So my name is Brian Hayes. I'm one of the associate editors at Academic Life in EM. I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Michelle Lin for the last couple of years, and I've just met so many great people through that experience. Thank you to all of our guests today. It's been a truly great discussion. A lot more to talk about, and I wish we had more than 30 minutes to talk more. So I really just have felt a lot of insight, a lot of tremendous experiences and creativity in this. I really think the next few years will be critical in identifying outcome measures and ensuring quality to really make sure that we can truly integrate foam into the EM curricula. And just thank you so much for speaking about your experiences and for publishing this great overview in the Annals of Emergency Medicine. Thanks very much.
Thank you.